Greetings, 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 and greetings once again. Welcome to the word of the day. Obviously, by now you know I'm George Matthews, the second senior pastor of both Calvary Resurrection Christian Church, as well as New Life Interfaith Ministries. That's right, New Life Interfaith Ministries, Calvary Resurrection Christian Church. And hello to each of our members, our supporters from those two wonderful and great churches. And hello to our global family. Pastor Jay and I love you all so much. And I hope you've enjoyed her the last 2 days of the weekly live stream. She's always a powerful teacher, and she brings it, and it doesn't take her long to slice and dice. And so thank you, Pastor Jay, and you'll be seeing some more of her whenever she's ready to come and share. I want to welcome you to our live stream again. Let's take a moment and synchronize ourselves, because as you're watching us and you're watching on a ministry page, either George Matthews Ministries or CRCC Life or NLIM.org. First of all, I want you to make sure you check into those pages often as possible. Like the pages, like the ministry pages. And as you're doing that, go down to the bottom corner where you see the word share. And as you see the word share, that gives you an opportunity so that we can synchronize and make sure everyone that you love and those persons that you care something about are able to pick up our stream today. So here we are. Press the share button, if you will. And as you're pressing that share button, that means that now you are giving this stream the opportunity to be now posted on your page. You're posting this on your page. And so once you do that, please also like it, share, and make sure that people are having an opportunity to interact with you. This is a great opportunity. The comment section, I love the comment section because I believe it's new church as we next need to know it. So say hello to your brothers and sisters that you haven't seen in some time as God puts them on your heart. Also, if there are questions about the subjects and topics that I can get to on the live stream, this is a great opportunity and a dynamic way to make that happen. The same holds true as far as the comment section can be used for revelation. As you're hearing from God, type out whatever it is you're hearing from God, and it's going to bless the lives of others who are viewing your comments, and it's going to generate and perhaps even stimulate certain particulars for them. So the comment section is as a way you can keep us abreast of other brothers and sisters that need prayer for particular things, whatever they might be experiencing. The comment section is for that. And I have people that are assigned to read those comments. They get the information back to me. Sometimes I have an opportunity to go through myself. So hello to everyone who is out there. We appreciate you so very, 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 very much. And so I want to say hello to a few of you as you are coming in. Shirley, hello. Tanya, Sheila, Linda. These are all the YouTube from the YouTube feed. PA Assets. Brittany, thank you for being here. Just saw your relatives a few minutes ago over at Calvary Church. Peggy, Kimberly, Deborah, thank you for being here. Blessings to you all and your families. Latoya, blessings to you and your family. Kaylin, Anitra, blessings. Lou, blessings. Phyllis, blessings to you. Thank you and God bless you. Thank you all for being here. It's a tremendous time. Edna, thank you for being here. And welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy Juneteenth. Happy Juneteenth. You see my shirt. I don't know if you can see all of it, but let me say thank you. I'm losing the stream here. Let me say thank you to Valparaiso Robinson for making my shirt custom. And so thank you. I thought I would wear it today and make everyone aware of the fact that we're happy to be here. So the comment section is very important. If you are viewing us on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to that channel. If you go back and listen to any of the videos, make sure you're subscribing to that channel. And that will help us to gain footing and space, if you will, and acknowledgments on the YouTube feed. Also, I want to mention, if I may, the Silence of Our Friends, which is another broadcast that happens on Monday nights. This particular week, I think we're going to do 2, Monday night at 6:30 and possibly Thursday night as well, as I've been invited to share virtually with another church. And so I think I'm going to record that. I'll have to check with our engineer and see how we can make that happen. Go over to YouTube, The Silence of Our Friends, and you can type in my name and it'll come up. Like it, share it, and help us to grow our space there as well. So happy Juneteenth. Juneteenth is important because there's the middle one I need to make sure. I think it's the George Matthews I've lost here. So we'll get it. Just stay with us. Juneteenth is a celebration. 1865 is the year. 2 years after the Civil War has been fought. And as a matter of fact, let me say this, and I'm going to do a show on this, but the Civil War was a tyranny against the American way of life and way of thinking. These people were set up to set a country. They waged war against the United States of America, the Southerners, to protect the rights of slavery. And the Civil War, which they note sometimes as the war between the states to try to water it down, it's called the Confederate War, and the Confederate flag is, is a flag that has been defeated. And so when you see people waving that Confederate flag, it only says one thing: that these are people who propagate this mindset. 150 years later, this mindset that black people and people of color should have been enslaved. Juneteenth is a day that celebrates the 2 years following the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation, which most people don't know. It was because of the signing of the Emancipation that President Lincoln caught a bullet to his head. The depth of prejudice. And I think that's what I'm going to do this show on today. I wanted to get back to something else, but in celebration of Juneteenth, I think I'm going to talk about it a bit. Because of the depth of the hatred of the man of color in America, its President Lincoln, then president, was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth, we're told, but there's some other pieces to that puzzle. I won't get into that now. And it makes you wonder if racism was that stiff and stringent at that time. How is it that nearly 150 plus years have passed and here we are still fighting to be free? I'm going to do a show, The Silence of Our Friends, and I'm going to cover how it was the Emancipation Proclamation, though signed, liberated then slaves, but they were released with nothing. So what do? One day you're working for massa and the mistress of the house or the plantation, and the generation before you worked there, and the generation before them worked there. And now all of a sudden, with the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation, you're free, but you don't have any resources. You don't have animals, you don't have farm implements, and you don't have land so that you can plant. So how then do you become profitable? How do you take care of yourself when you've been prisoners, if you will, of the state? Prisoners in the face of slavery and enslavement. It was an atrocity. See, slavery, was one thing. But the release of the slaves was another form of slavery, because with the signing of the 14th Amendment and the 13th Amendment, one gave you the benefit to be free, but beyond freedom, you had to be engaged with, if you were a vagrant, if you were caught walking around, let's just say, you had to be engaged with business or on business for a person not of color. A white person had to have given you permission to be walking around, let's just say free. And if you didn't have any business, then you were arrested, all other things being equal, and put into prison camps. And you still built the country by free labor. The Civil War was all about keeping free labor. It was all economics. It was the white American taking the advantage of the African, being brought from Africa to work the stolen continent, America, stolen from the Native Americans. Christopher Columbus could not have discovered an already inhabited country. No one wants to talk about that. And the reason for that is because only people of means, the rich, kept history. They recorded it, whitewashed it, and made it appear as they wanted to make it appear. And that's what we were taught until, and that was the reason they never wanted slaves to learn to read and consequently to write, to become literate. And that's never been the will of God. Once God brought Israel out of Egypt, he said in Exodus chapter 3, I'll bring you out with great substance. You've been slaves for 400 years, but what good is it for God to emancipate, or for any person to be emancipated, and they're not given resources to repay them for all of the work and all of the labor that they have contributed to a particular culture or society. He repeats it again in Exodus chapter 12. Israel left Egypt with great substance, silver and gold, and the finery of Egypt, because you have to, in law, they have a phrase called making someone whole, and that's the reason that you have a litigious society. The reason that people sue is to be made whole, W-H-O-L-E. Some things were taken from them and they need those things to be added back. So hello, everyone that's out there. I appreciate you all being here. Make sure you are sharing. And so let's talk further, if you will. Remember, I said, and think about it, 2 years, Juneteenth, 2 years after the emancipation was signed, 2 years later, the slaves in Texas received the news. And why is that? Because it was of a benefit. It was beneficial to their white masters to have free labor. And I ask people that are not of color, why wouldn't you be ahead of people of color, black and brown people? Why wouldn't you? You had nearly 400 years of free labor. You built industries. You built businesses. And before the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation, before that happened, slaves worked for little or nothing building up this country. So you have people who don't want to acknowledge the wrong of America. People who want you to just go past it. And I'm going to do a show. I'm going to talk about it Monday evening, of these white pastors. And it's amazing to me. I just want them to be quiet, because listen and learn. If you haven't, I told you about the fact that I had a kidney stone years ago. And the pain that I writhed with for 36, 48 hours was immense. And after which I saw my then doctor. He said, this is second to a man to that of the birthing pain of a woman, giving birth to children, obviously. And I said, man, women are amazing creatures, because that pain almost took me out. And I say to people, unless you had a kidney stone, you can't talk about kidney stones. That pain is a pain that you know nothing about. The best thing you can do is listen and learn from someone who has had that experience. And until America, and until white pastors, and even those who are pastoring multi-ethnic churches acknowledge and admit. In other words, you can't do harm to me as a people in my community at the voting ballot. You can't vote for this present administration, then swarm in to my community bringing relief. No, it is your vote that was hurting the community. And if you really want to help the community, then you have to vote for people who have the best interest in the community and of the community. And we've played that game, the okie doke. I'm going to help you on the left hand. I'm going to throw the rock, but then I'm going to hide my hand. I'm going to go to the voting booth and vote for particular interests that don't suit your case. And people of color and not of color have to wake up and tell the truth. We cannot be silent any longer. And so, I don't know, man, I'm off into it now. So let's go for it. Let's go for it. Here we are. We've been talking about Juneteenth. But remember Galatians chapter 5, verse 22 and 23. We talk about the fruit of the Spirit. And one of the last portions of fruit is that of meekness. And meekness means maintaining a disposition where you can be taught, teachable, and then, making up a word, learnable. You've been taught something and you're learning it. You're making room to acquiesce to the new information. We said that a crisis and slavery, the great blight in America, was in fact a crisis. A crisis is a stage in a sequence of events at which the trend of all future events, especially for better or worse, is determined. So the crisis, slavery, for example, or racism in America, will determine, our handling of that will determine all future events. So we talked about the fact that we're in a crisis so that we can reset. We understand resetting bones, though painful, in order for the bone to grow back properly, it has to be reset. We understand resetting a phone or an electronic device in order for it to work properly, for all the apps to open and close as they should, for you to be able to take full advantage of all the amenities of the device. Sometimes it has to be reset. We understand that even analog clocks as well as digital clocks, depending on the case, have to be reset in order to keep time. You can have the clock, you can have the bone, you can have the device, but if it's not reset properly, then the functionality and the future purposes of that device can be diminished. In other words, the thing exists, but the question becomes, is the thing, people, me as an individual, our culture, our race, are we serving the purpose for which we were created? And I didn't get to this, but I will very soon. Only the maker, and I'm using capital M, referring to deity, only God himself, and only the small lowercase m maker of a thing, knows the full potential and possesses the knowledge of what it is required to get the thing created to its desired maximum outcome and purpose. Only God knows what it takes to get you and me to function after a crisis and even through the crisis to our maximum outcome. So it's a lack of knowledge. Hosea 4:6. In other words, I want to talk a little bit about blind spots. In other words, you can be driving, an individual can be driving. You're talking to me in these comment sections. Push me back, help me. One can be driving, and because you're driving and you have a car, does not mean that somewhere in the car, as particularly you're interested in changing lanes, maybe you are behind a larger vehicle and you can't see around it, something is preventing you, obscuring your view inside the vehicle from seeing things that exist as they are. That's called a blind spot. It's your viewpoint is myopically skewed. It's skewed, and so that's called myopia when you don't see properly. Doesn't mean the thing isn't there. Does not mean that the reality of the fact is not there. There's an eyesight, there's a viewpoint, a vantage point challenge. So it's a lack of knowledge that skews people's vantage point. Hosea 4:6. In other words, and I want you to get this, not knowing God's perspective. Hosea 4:6, my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge, because you've rejected knowledge. He goes on to say, I will also reject thee. So when there is a knowledge that exists, the question becomes, do you have such a blind spot in your soul? You see, these blind spots, we're not talking about physical eyes. That's the natural realm. What I'm referring to now is your soulish realm, the way you process, the way an individual thinks. Such a blind spot, such myopia that though something exists, you can't identify. Remember, I told you the eyes capture images. The ears hear sound waves, but it is the mind that determines what images the eyes saw and what sounds the ears heard. Your eyes don't define it. Your ears don't define it. It is the mind. That's the reason that we have Romans chapter 12, verse 2, that every now and again we have to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. So you'll type out what kind of revelation you're receiving now. Now notice this. When it comes to God's agenda, seeing things from God's perspective, there really are four classifications of people that everyone fits in either one or the other, or the combination of the same. Number one, wrong people doing the wrong things. That's evil. Wrong people, just wrong. And there are some people, racist, supremacist, separatist, who are just wrong people doing the wrong thing, which is my definition of evil. Wrong. The second classification is that of wrong people doing the right thing. In other words, you can be the wrong person, but you're doing the right thing. In other words, the answer to this question becomes of note. Did God tell you to be doing this? Is that your assignment? Or did you see something that needed to be done and you felt compelled or impelled to do such? Wrong people doing the right thing, which, in other words, Hagar, for example, she did what Abram's wife said for her to do, but it wasn't her responsibility to reproduce with Abram. It was Sarai's responsibility, whose name was later changed to that of Sarah. She was the wrong person. She did the right thing. She reproduced, but she was the wrong person. There's so much in that. Number three, right people doing the wrong thing. You know, Abram went down into Egypt. I think it's Genesis chapter 13. He went down into Egypt after he had walked 500 miles, 7 years to get from Mesopotamia to Canaan. And after he gets there, and God's taking care of him for this 5-year trek, and he gets there, and there's a famine in Canaan, and he goes down to Egypt, trusting that he could produce for himself when God had been his production and his protection the whole time. Remember, Abram was the right person, but he did the wrong thing. God said, leave all your family members. I'm coming back to that. Hold that point. And I'm going to take you to a new country. He took Lot with him. Out of guilt, because Lot was his brother's son. Lot was his nephew. His brother died untimely death. And Abram felt, well, I need to take care of him. Dad is old. Terah, our father, is old. My brother's already passed away. And God can't take care of Lot any better than I can. So let me take him. He was the right person, but he did the wrong thing. Then fourthly, you have right people doing the right thing. And that's where we have to get the church. That's where we have to get ourselves, even in this wake of racial or ethnic clashes that are happening around the globe, political upheavals and misheavals, if you will, all the carnage that's being left behind with the law enforcement, the poor law enforcement officers who are racist at heart, and who have in the last 5 years killed some 1,200 to 1,500 people of color, Africans, still waiting to become Americans in America. We have to get to the point, right people doing right practices. Notice this. You know, the first time God said to Moses, speak to the rock, he spoke to it. The second time God tells him to speak to the rock, he strikes the rock. And God said, you gave Israel a poor representation of who I am. Second to that, you didn't know the rock was a type of Christ. I only wanted you to move the church, move Israel into speaking the word and allowing God to work it out, as you did when I asked you to speak to the rock the first time. He was the right person, but the second time he smote the rock. Right person doing the wrong thing versus the right person doing the right thing. Pride. I'll say it again. Say it once again. Pride causes people to envision that one race is superior to another. It is the culprit is pride. It is not indigenous to a particular group. You're not born thinking like that. Racism is learned. And if it is learned, and it is, then that means there are teachers of racism. I didn't want to talk about this. I have someone I have great respect for and have had over the years. And I saw a post. They're one of my Facebook friends. I have great respect for them. But they're trying to, in a post, make equal the removal of Confederate statues equal and congruent to the removal of civil rights figures. And I don't know what happens to make your eyes, the eyes of your mind, that closed. See, that's taught, that's learned. Where you equate Confederate soldiers and Confederate generals who had nothing to do, and the whole reason they fought against the North was to protect the plantation owners' rights to have slaves. That's all it was about. It was all economics. And only 6% thereabouts of white men owned plantations. The other 94 were just as poor as the slaves, but because of their color, the lack of melanin in their skin, they identified with the plantation owners and fought in the Civil War to try to keep slavery enacted. That's all it was about. And for persons who came through the civil rights movement in that era to fight for civil rights and to be given the honor of statues and to make them icons, it's not the same equivalent of those evil men who heinously took their parts in keeping slavery as America's breach with human consciousness, to keep it engaged. It is not the same. And I started to get angry and take some other measures. And the Lord says to me, he says, George, he says, remember when you were ostracized from your, by your home reformation or denomination? I said, yes, Lord. Pastor Jay and I did not leave. I never said we left. We had to build in other areas that the Lord told me to build. And people, some of whom I've known all my life, treated me indifferently. Some of the ministers, some of whom I was ordained with, and they never disrespected me, but they had to wait for someone else to give them the nod that I was okay. I was treated like I was toxic, and so for years, I never even assembled with that part that I hold so dear in my life of the training that I received. And one year the Lord said to me, he said, you must walk in love with these people because they simply don't understand until you're able to model what I've called you to do, and then they'll understand. And there was the same mindset when I saw this person. I was so hurt emotionally. I'm thinking, because you walk with God, you have to not have these blind spots on, because of the influence that God has given you. It has to be, no, but racism blinds the mind. Racism is a blind spot. They're not pushing me back in this comment section. I don't know whether you are or not. So if God is our Father, I did a show on this in St. Matthew chapter 6 in response to the disciples' question, Lord, teach us to pray, as John the Baptist also taught his disciples. And Jesus said, after this manner, therefore pray ye, our Father. You are a collective term. The Father of the African, as well as the Native American, as well as the Asian, as well as the Latino or Hispanic, as well as the Anglo-Saxon. And I'm going to I'll say this, and I've been getting in trouble for the last few weeks since we started this, the Silence of Our Friends format on YouTube. No one in America is purely white. No one in America is purely white. There have been so much blending of the races. And then I had a meeting with one of my doctors yesterday, and I said to him, what's so crazy about all of this is the fact that blood is interchangeable regardless of the races. So bigots and racists have to be just myopically skewed in their psychology, in their thinking, because even the blood tells you we're all humans and we're in the same. See, he's our Father, and out of one blood made he all nations. So we always need God's perspective. This is how you avoid blind spots. Deuteronomy 34:7 tells us that when Moses was 120 years, God, before Moses transitioned, God did an autopsy on him. And the scripture says that Moses, at 120 years old, his eyesight was not taken from him. His eyes were not dim. That's the reading of the King James Version. Neither were his natural forces abated, which means God put some emphasis on the fact that Moses could still see from God's perspective. He was not racist or bigoted by jeopardizing perspective. And racism is a perspective issue. It means someone's racist eyes and mind views as a filter through which they see the world. Now, remember, you call Abraham white, people, and black. We say Abraham is the father of 5 major world religions. He's the father of the believers, Christians. He's father of the Hebrews. He's father of the Muslims. Who else claims him as father? And and the list goes on as far as world religions are concerned. The fact that Abram is father to 5 world religions, and then watch what God said to him in Genesis chapter 11. Leave your family. No one preaches that. And go to a place that I will show you, and then all the way into chapter 12, and I'll make of you a great nation. I'm going to start with you and connect you with another nation of people. If God was racist, he never would have told Abram. Abram already had a family in the Ur of the Chaldeans. But God says to him, leave them. I'm going to start a new thing. And I want to give you perspective. In other words, how do we get racist? How do we get the races, the ethnicities, the ethnos in the first place? It was God's idea, God's perspective. The scripture says that Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And from those 3 sons came all, the nations of the world. I need to move along. Romans chapter 10, verse 12. Notice this. There is no distinction between Jew and Greek. God is not a racist. And we have these pastors, Pastor Rod Parsley, I couldn't believe and you've got in his church, 60-70%, I think, are black people in Ohio. Giglio out of a mega church in Atlanta, crazy racist statements that said that slavery was a blessing. Yeah, it was a blessing to America, but it was a curse on every level to black people. You can't talk about slavery and categorize it as a blessing unless your mind is skewed. And these men have been pastoring black people. I wish black people would just vet who your leaders are. And I say that with the most love I can say that. But until someone has had a kidney stone, they cannot talk to you about kidney stone issues. It's amazing to me. I'm hearing these guys come out. You see, and here's the issue. And we have people even locally that are trying to clean up their racist thoughts, their racist actions, racist activities. And it's not that black lives matter to them. Black tithes matter. I'll say it again. I'm already in trouble. And the Lord told me this morning, he said, I accept you. Be okay. And so I'm walking in the strength of that. You're getting a bit of the silence of our friends bleed over in light of Juneteenth being this day. many of the white pastors who are trying to clean up their acts, quote unquote, to prevent black people from being in their congregations who have been offended by their racist recent statements, actions, and activities, are trying to clean it up, not because they have a change of heart, but because if they had a change of heart, they would be saying Black Lives Matter, and their actions would prove that at the voting polls, voting booth, as well as in the community. But I'm understanding it. I get it. It's all economy. Black tides matter. Black tides matter. And I love you. I'm okay with me. I've had to learn in many instances in my life to be a lonely man, to walk alone, because people don't like truth. And I realize that some things I say, I may be with Jesus before it catches up with people. That's why it's important to say the truth and to live in the truth. Now notice this. Where's my time? 12:37. What can I get in here? You all have been accustomed to Pastor Jay, and I know she gives it to you quickly, and I don't necessarily. There's another piece here that I want you to get. I want you to get. Now, if God is our Father, St. Matthew 6, 9, and 10, if he's our Father, would he, and then you can't argue with that. Our is in your King James Bible that you love so much. And one of these days I'm going to do a show on King James and who he truly was. And it's going to be shocking. But that's for the YouTube audience. That's for the silence of our friends. I'm anointed to do part of this. Part of what I'm called to do is to socially impact my generation. For all the time I've been called, I knew that. And I couldn't understand at the time, all those years, how to do it. But with the coming of the recent events and with the quarantine and with the new emphasis being placed on digital communications, digital church, electronic church, virtual audiences, I get it now. I have to have a venue through which I speak to the unchurched these truths so that they come into the knowledge of truth. And when they understand social truth, they're in a better position to receive spiritual truth. And so getting back to St. Matthew chapter 6, our Father, if God is our Father, would he, and I just want you to walk through this with me for your people outside of your ethnicity. If God is our Father, and the Bible says he is, again, Matthew 6, 9, and 10, would he promote? Would he be responsible for, here we go, sibling rivalry? Would the God who is our Father have the perspective of causing his multiracial, multi-ethnic children to rival each other through the veins and the heinousness, the byproducts of racism? I don't believe it. I don't believe you can be God who is our Father and sponsor sibling rivalry between your children. That's something that came from men. And maybe I'll close with this. I have so much more. Lord, you will have to wait till Monday night. I was going to talk about this Monday night, but I feel led to say this. This may help someone. This may help some of my white brothers who are trying to pastor black people and pacify black people when your real actions and your heart has not been converted. People outside of our race and ethnicity who are in the various 7 mountains of influence, and perhaps you need a change of heart, and that's what has to engage, and that's why the truth becomes vital, it becomes critical, and an anointing with the truth, it becomes critical. The Lord said to me something this morning in prayer, and I never thought about it. Oh my God. He said, George, remember there are over 100 inventions that have made better your society. Everything from the traffic light to the ice cream scoop to fiber optic cable through which we have this means of being able to talk to each other today. Everything from the rail system to the peanut butter. Everything from the clothes dryer. I mean, patents that weren't given to people of color, but over 100 tremendous, and many more than that. And you do need to do your research on that. And then the Lord said to me, he said, along with the inventions, he said, just think about how black people of color, have affected the culture with music. Everything from R&B, rhythm and blues, ballads, to rap, to classical music, to jazz, to even country music. Charlie Pride, and got another country brother who's has some gold albums, or at least a gold album, I should say. Everything from, just think about sports. Think about, most football teams now 70, 80, 90% black. College, pros, basketball, baseball. Well, baseball, the Latino brothers have that. Thank God for that. They get it. I'm glad for that. Golf. Think of it, man. Think of how the culture has been impacted. Ben Carson, Gifted Hands. That's his book. One of his two books, and he's now over the interior of housing, which is another show for another day. But just think about people of color. And the Lord said this to me this morning in light of that. And I'm just trying to close here. I'm trying to land this. I have so much more to say. He said, George, Lord, I still feel him. He says, if slavery killed hundreds of thousands of black people, just forget the number that in the Middle Passage, in the Atlantic Ocean, think about the bodies that are strewn there coming from Mother Africa to America, and the various trips just didn't make it because of sickness and disease and incendiary conditions. But the ones that did come were the matriarchs and patriarchs of we who are influencers of today's society. He said, if that many slaves died, and yet black people, black and brown people, influenced America to the degree that they have, he said, what is still in the cemetery? It made me weep. I couldn't. I said, Lord, if you give me much more. I was weeping. I was in my prayer closet. I said, Lord, it's coming too quickly. I said, Lord, just slow the road. I said, I'm too emotional. And I'm not an emotional dude. That's not really my makeup. But man, I was just reliving slavery and the heinousness of families that were separated, that never saw each other. And then women who were beaten, men who were hung, people who were dragged, split apart, people who worked from can't see in fields, and people who lived in shacks. I listened to the interview of a former slave. They said that we didn't know anything about beds. We slept on the floor. Can you imagine? I dressing in rags, and I thought about Fannie Lou Hamer out of Mississippi, and I listened to her testimony. She talked about how she was beaten on one side of her body until she said her body was as hard as steel. This was in the oh my God, this was in the 40s. She said, all I knew was living on the plantation even after slavery, because all we could do was sharecrop, which was another form of slavery. And these people want to say we need to just forget it. You've got to be kidding me. But just think, don't miss the point. The Lord said, with all that happened and the number of slaves that were killed, he said, and your culture has influenced the world this much. How much is in the grave? He said, that's why your people are hated. He said, just always remember, George, and I close with this. He said, George, always remember the natural resources that I've imbued planted in the continent called Africa. You can do a search for yourself. I've done it. Countless minerals, gems, precious stones, everything from the diamond all the way down, petroleum, coal. It's amazing. He said, I did it intentionally because I'm a God of revelation and I hide things in darkness. I mean that figuratively as well as literally. There's something in you. Daniel chapter 2, verses 21 and 22. God said, I stand in light, but I call things out of darkness. And so I say to my brothers and sisters, happy Juneteenth. If you've not received Jesus Christ as Lord, there's so much in this, and I hope this did some good. I feel like I'm all over the place. I don't know. Maybe I'm too emotional to even do this show today. But thank you all for tuning in with us. And I feel some kind of way. But if you're not received Jesus Christ as Lord, simply pray this prayer with me. Heavenly Father, I receive Jesus into my spirit, and that means I'm born again. Jesus now will begin leading your life from the inside out through his revelation. That is his voice leaning in and speaking through and to you. If you've not associated with the church, we'd love to have you at either the New Life Church or the Calvary Church. It makes us no difference. We can take you in virtually. And just send us your information and we'll have someone get in contact with you so quickly. We appreciate you so very, very, very much. Don't forget to join us Sunday. 9:30 is our stream for our combined services for our churches, New Life Church as well as Calvary Church. The stream is at 9:30, and you can contact us through any of our particular formats. I think that's all. Oh, I know what I wanted to say. I know what I wanted to say. There, I've taken up so much time. Join me Sunday. I'll read it again. Of 10 doctors surveyed, they've listed from 1 to 39 the most dangerous to the least dangerous places that this particular dreaded disease can be contracted. And these numbers are going up because people are not paying attention. Keep your face covered, that is your nose and mouth. When in the public, wash your hands frequently. Sanitize your hands where soap and water are not available. Keep your 6 feet or greater safe social distancing. It is very important. And just know, Pastor J and I love you all so much. Thank you all for being there. Thank the engineer for always making this work. We appreciate you so much. Until next live stream, you go with God. And remember, he is our Father. Happy Juneteenth. Blessings.